Good afternoon, everyone. So this will be the 2 o'clock training video for the conventional only lesson. So we're going to be covering res and just how to do conventional only. We're going to start here, probably another 4 or 5 minutes, give everybody else get a chance to sign on.
Hello?
Hey, Brett, we're going to start in a minute. Just hang tight.
Oh, no problem.
Alrighty, it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started. So as I said before, my name's Clint Rowland. I'm one of the field application engineers here at BK Technologies. I work with the sales team to provide training and demo assistance. Today, we're going to be focusing on learning how to use RES, our radio editing software, to program a KNG radio with conventional channels. Very basically, the first thing we're going to start with is how to read, save, open, and write a code plug. This is for the most basic of users, just something simple. Generally speaking, making the code plug is the hard job. Programming the radio, that's the easy job. So to begin, you'll notice here, I've got a red dot showing that my radio is not connected. I have a radio connected to my computer now. I'm turning the radio on. You hear it connected to my computer, and now it's green. The green light shows that the software and the computer, excuse me, the software and the radio have handshook and they're talking to each other. So now I can hit read radio. I do not want to save. And there it successfully read the radio. I know that it read because when I click on the global tab, I can see my ESN right here at the bottom matches the radio I have connected. If I've already got a code plug that someone else has made for me, or if I want to save this code plug, I can go to File, Save As, and then find a location on my computer to save it. Or if someone's edited a code plug for me or made some adjustments and I want to write it to the radio, I can go to File, Open, select the code plug that I want to program, select Open, and then hit Write Radio. I know that the radio is successfully written to the programming is successfully written to the radio. When the radio restarts, you'll see that I disconnect, and then it will turn green to show that I'm back connected. So one of the big advantages of the RES or RES software is that we can change the way that it looks to suit our needs. So here I can go into View, and I can go to Color Theme Selection, and I can select a different color based on my preferences. We'll use the orange and dark gray for today's training class. Additionally, I can change the size of the font. So I can go to View, Font Size, and I can increase the font size. Notice I can also hit Control Plus as well, or I can hit Control Minus to shrink it back down. Keep in mind that we like to use these buttons on the side, and if you keep making it bigger, you're going to have to force yourself to scroll the screen. So it's a little give and take as far as what your preference is. And then lastly, when you first install the RES software, if you click on the Zone tab, it will default to what's called Single Channel View. So here I can look at a zone, and then I can look at the single channel inside that zone. This is great for troubleshooting. If I have a particular channel that's not performing the way I want, I can use Single Channel View, and I can look at just one channel, and then I can focus on just the parameters for that channel to find out which one's not right. But the more popular view would be Multi-Channel View, and we can go to that by going to View, and then Channel View Selection, and Multi-Channel View. So now the plus to multi-channel view is here I can see multiple channels at a time, and I can see my layout. So this gives me the opportunity to compare all of the channels that I have loaded to identify what I have or don't have. So let's begin with a brand new code plug. I can go to File, New, I'll select Portable and VHF. So now I'm at a brand new default code plug. If you've got a radio that's misbehaving or not doing what you think it should be doing, sometimes just going to a brand new default code plug, blowing that into the radio, and then programming the radio how you desire can help reset the radio and reset any bugs or gremlins that you may be experiencing. But here with this fresh code plug, the first thing we're going to look at is how to add multiple zones. So again, by clicking on the Zone tab here, I can add zones by hitting +Z, or I can subtract zones by hitting -Z. Once I have a zone created, I can then go to the zone settings, and I can edit that zone. So for the alias, instead of it having zone 2, I can have it say something like mutual aid. And for zone 1, I can click this drop down, select zone 1, and I can rename it to primary. I can also use all caps, and then you can also use special characters as well. If I don't want the primary zone first and I want the mutual aid zone first, I can select the mutual aid zone, click zone settings, and then under zone index, I can change what order it comes in. So here I can just select number 1, and you'll tell that the two have swapped places. Also under zone settings, I can disable keypad programming. With this checked, someone who has access to the keypad programming in the radio will not be able to edit this zone, delete this zone, or add any channels to this zone. I can also accept or reject an incoming clone. If set to reject and someone is attempting to clone from one radio over this zone, it will not work. Once I have my zones created, I then need to create channels within those zones. So to add channels, I can either hit +C or I can hit -C. I can also hit +/-C, and it brings up this little window here. So from here, I can type in a number like 1 through 16 and click Add. And now you'll see that it has added channels 1 through 16 here for me. So once you've added a channel, it's time to edit it. So first you have the label. It should be self-explanatory. It could be dispatch or fire attack, LE training, whatever the case may be. We then have the frequency. So this would be the frequency for receive that you would type in. You have the receive mode. This can be analog, digital, or mixed. If analog is set, you can then set an analog code guard. So if you set none, that's 0. That's the same thing as carrier squelch. If I set it to a different one, like 74.4, so now it's requiring a subaudible tone of 74.4 before it breaks squelch. Or if you're using what's called DPL, or digital PL tone, again, this is still an analog channel, but now we're going to use a digital signaling. I can type in D first, and then I can select from this drop down, like D205. Alternatively, if I have a digital channel, here under receive mode, I can change that from analog to digital. Digital channels rely on what's called a network access code, or a NAC. Now this NAC is traditionally done in a hexadecimal number. So here 293 is the reserved hexadecimal number for carrier squelch, basically meaning that no matter what, it's going to break squelch. But if I want to make it so that it only breaks squelch if certain parameters are met, I can change the NAC code. So here I can just select it, delete it, and then I can type in something like 1 alpha 3. Again, it's a hexadecimal number, so you can go through 1 through 9 and then A through F. If we keep scrolling to the right here, you now see the settings for the transmit frequency. So here's the transmit frequency that I would input for the transmit side. And again, from the transmit mode, I can select analog, digital, or mixed. If I select analog, I can set my analog code guard. So that can either be an analog PL tone, Or if I type in D, I can then set the digital PL tone. And then if I was to select a digital channel here, again, I can go and select my NAT code. So this is the basics on adding an analog or a digital channel. Some pro tips here is if all of my channels are going to be digital, instead of having to select these one at a time, I can right click, go to copy parameter, and I can say to all. Or if they're not all, let's say just the first 4 are analog and the rest of them are digital, I can select one to analog, right click, copy parameter, set to multiple. Then I can type in the ones that I want, like 1-4. I can even put a comma in there and say that I want 16 to also be analog. I can do that paste, and now you see 1 through 4 is analog and 16 is analog. Now with an analog channel, we can also support MDC 1200 signaling. To input the MDC 1200 signaling information in, go to System, select the conventional system, so you can have multiple IDs in, and then here on the right-hand side, you'll see MDC list. I'll select this list, and this will pop up here. Let's make this a better size. Uh-oh, come on. There it goes. So here I can add a row. So here, my MDC ID is in a decimal. Sometimes people, they input their MDC ID as hexadecimal. So you need to make sure that you're on the right page with whoever's assigning IDs. But I can insert an ID for the unit ID. And if I have multiple systems that I'm a part of, I can put different IDs, and then we can assign them to different channels. Oh, that was not right. There, like that one. So what we need to take in mind here is that we have an index number. Index number 1 is here, and index number 2 is here. So index number 1 is associated to ID 1234, and index number 2 is associated to ID 214. So once we've set our IDs here in this list, I can close that list, I can go back to the channel that's analog, and I can assign it. So if I scroll over after my transmit information, I have my ANI type. So my announcement type is going to be MDC. I can then set the mode. I can have it send my MDC ID before the transmit, after the transmit, or it can have it do both. And then on my announcement index, here is where I can set the ID. So remember, index 1 was associated to ID 1234, and index number 2 was associated with ID 214. So for example, this channel, I can set it to 1, but this channel I can set to 2. So if you have 2 different systems, we can set 2 different IDs depending on what channel you're on. When we're talking about digital channels, however, we talk about P25 IDs. So for example here, number 2, this is a digital channel. So if I click on the system and the conventional system, I see that my P25 ID is right here. Here I can assign a unique ID to each one of my radios. So this allows me to identify which radio is sending data. This can be important for things like GPS or for dispatching and identifying radios. Once you have your code plug made the way you want, where you've built out each one of your channels, you inputted your frequencies, you've done your PL tones, your code guards, your NAT codes, you've set up your code plug the way you want, the last few steps that you need to pay attention to is what I call the trim work, right? So we've got menus, buttons, and display. So we'll start with the display. If I click on the global tab and click on the conventional tab, you can see where I can set my display settings. So here I can have the top line be my zone label. I can have the middle line be my channel label. And then a favorite of mine is to have the bottom line be the radio name. So here, once I've set this display, I can go back to the common, and under radio name, I can assign this radio a name. Now, when you're assigning radio names, The radio will not transmit this name. It just displays in the face of the radio. This is great if you have to drop your radios off before a meeting and you get out of the meeting and you have to play the radio shuffle. Which one's whose is mine? This is a great identifier when you put a bunch of radios on a charger, so you can pick the radio up and you can look on the display and you can say whose radio is whose. Some organizations, they require asset tracking, and they require asset tags on the radio. We can put the asset tag number here so that you don't even have to pull the battery off the back of the radio to verify the asset tag number. There are a lot of different things we can do with display. After we've set our display up, we can click on menus, our menu buttons up here, and then we can set up our menus. The easiest thing that I do is I just hit remove all, and then I pick my favorites. Some fun ones would be backlight. That allows the user to turn the backlight on and off. Battery life allows the user to observe the remaining battery life in the radio, and it will also give an estimated time till empty based on that radio's use. If you're ever going to be doing cloning, you have to have the cloning menu there. And then lastly, probably one of my favorites would be radio info and versions. Of course, there's a lot of other feature sets here, like user select code guard menus, voice muting, vote scan options, encryption options. There is scanning options that allows the user to edit the scan list on the fly, or turn scan on and off. Once you have your menu set up, you can select the menu order by clicking and dragging, or you can just select alphabetize and have it alphabetize it for you. If your radio is going to be doing keypad programming, you have to make sure that under the menu selection, you also select the conventional programming menu, and you have to select keypad programming. This will automatically add keypad programming to the bottom of the menu. There's no other place it can go but at the very bottom of the menu. Once we have our menus done, the last thing that we need to look at is doing our buttons. So when we click on the buttons button, we can here see a picture of the radio, and when we hover over a selection, we can see that it highlights just where this button sets up. Now the orange button is configured to have a long press and a short press, and the duration of those presses can be configured here with button press in seconds and long press. So for example, in order to activate the emergency, you can press and hold the button for 2 seconds if you want, and to deactivate the emergency, you can press and hold it for 6 seconds if you want, just for example. We can also set other things here instead of emergency. We can have the backlight, have it do battery life, call alert, turn scan on and off. We can have it do nuisance channel delete. You can program it to do whatever you need it to. It doesn't have to be the emergency button. Likewise with this collar switch, a fun one there is control lock. And then here we have our soft buttons here that we can program. The first one that I always make sure is programmed is the menu button, because remember, we just spent that time picking all those different feature sets we wanted in our menu. And if we don't have a menu button, then there's no way for the user to ever access that menu we made for them. And then the second thing that I always make sure I add is zone select. And I make sure that I add zone select because we have multiple zones, and without it, the user won't be able to select those other zones we've given them. If for whatever reason you put more than 16 channels in a zone and your radio is not one of our command radios with a continuous knob on top, it might be a good idea to also put channel select in there as well. Another pro tip here is where you see keypad select. If I have it set to zone, for example, then the user can just simply, using the 12-digit keypad on the face of the radio, type in the zone they want to go to and then press enter. And it takes out one extra button pressed just to make things a bit faster. If you're using control lock, I'm going to close this, make sure you go to global common and scroll down to control lockouts. So here, you're only going to lock out what is checked. So if I have, for example, the emergency button checked, the channel knob checked, the toggle switches, the side button, Now, when the collar switch is set to lock, only the collar switch and the PTT will work. It's not a good idea to lock out the button that also does the unlocking. Lastly, right now we've made a K&G code plug. You know that when I press on the buttons, we see our K&G radio here. What if I already have a K&G radio made and my unit or the people that I help program radios for just got a bunch of K&G 2s? Well, we can go up to options here. We can go to radio type, portable, and select K&G 2. So now when I select buttons, you can see here's the K&G 2. Here I have access to the top, middle, and bottom accessory button as well. Or what if I have a portable code plug and I want to go into a mobile? Again, I can close this window. I can go to options, radio type, and select mobile. Now when I click on buttons, I'm looking at a mobile that I can configure. One important note about a mobile is that it has a menu button hard-coded in the side, so you really don't need this one to be set to menu. You have an extra button there to be whatever you like. It's also a really good idea to save your code plug before you change between K&G, K&G2, or mobile, and save them as such, just to make sure that you keep them straight. Can you put a K&G2 code plug in a K&G or vice versa? Of course you can. One of the big differentiating factors when you do that is that it will ignore whatever setting is set for that middle button. This is all I have to teach you guys today. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask your question, and I'll do the best I can to help you out. Let's try to keep things focused on conventional programming with Res. And then if you have any issues whatsoever, if your radios aren't functioning the way you want, or you're having trouble with your software not working or getting access to your software, I would recommend that you reach out to our customer service line. And I'm going to give you their 800 number right now. It is 1-800-422-6281. And with that, I'll open up if anybody has any questions. Bueller. We got a hand raise. Let me see if I can do this. Unmute. Here we go, Bob. What you got?
Quick question for you. Could you talk about the zone scan and channel scan?
Of course I can. Give me a quick second here to type this in, and we'll talk about zone scan and channel scan.
Thank you.
So there's zone scan and channel scan. So with channel scan, you are only going to scan the channels that are identified in that zone. You're not going to scan across zones into other zones, only the channels inside that zone. And zone scan will identify zones that you can scan. So let me scooch this over here. So there's our customer care line, as I said before. Let me do a demonstration here on the fly. Alrighty. So this is a spreadsheet here to demonstrate different zones, okay? So here we have zone 1, we have zone 2, we have zone 3. Zone 1 will have fire, we'll have dispatch, tactical. Zone 2 will have LE, we'll have tactical, and we'll have CERT. And then zone 3, we'll just have mutual aid, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So just like that, if I look in res here, okay, I can do, let's do this. So we have 3 zones. All right. So this is zone 2. So this is fire, tactical. This is LE. This is tactical. And then this will be our mutual aid 1 and 2. Okay. So what we're going to do here is in zone, let's add, nope. Let's add one more channel for the sake of demonstration. So I have 3 channels here, fire, tactical, dispatch. I want to scan between fire and dispatch. So if I scooch over here, after the transmit information, after the announcement information, here I have scan list, on or off, or vote. We'll skip over vote. So if I select on both of these, now I'm going to be scanning fire and dispatch, okay? So when I click channel scan on, I'm scanning fire and dispatch. When I click channel scan off, I'm not scanning. If I have channel scan flipped on and I flip from zone 2 to my other zone 2, and I have this listed on, this is LE here, if I remember right. Yeah. So with that flipped on, I'm only scanning that one channel. I'm no longer scanning the fire stuff because it's in a different zone. And likewise, if I'm in my mutual aid here and I have both of these selected, when channel scan is turned on, I will be scanning both the mutual aid, but I will not be scanning fire, LE, or dispatch. But if I go back to this zone and under my zone settings, I select zone scan. And then I do the same from the next zone. I select zone scan. Now, when I turn zone scan on, I will be scanning fire, dispatch, and LE because they have the scan list turned on. I will not be scanning mutual aid because mutual aid is not turned on. And again, for your buttons, it would look something like this. We'd click on buttons. I would probably put channel scan on the left toggle, and on the right toggle, I would put zone scan. So then you would flip channel scan on to turn channel scan, and then flip zone scan on to turn zone scan on to scan across zones. We do have in the roadmap, we're working for a single button press so that you can press one button and it will scan every channel that you have selected to have scan turned on. And then likewise, when you give your users the capability to edit, so if I go under menus and I select conventional main menu, if I select channel scan here, that will allow them to turn channel scan on and off. Channel scan list here allows them to go into the list of channels in their zone and select which ones they want to have scan turned on or off. Likewise, if I scroll to the bottom, I have zone scan, which will turn zone scan on and off, and then have zone scan list, which will then show the user a list of available zones in the radio and give them the option to turn that zone on or off. I hope that answered your question. Do we have any more questions? We got one more. Here we go. What's your question?
Hi, Clint. Drew from Forestry.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the indexing. We pull our code plug. It's actually kind of built in Tallahassee, and then we customize it to our individual needs.
Okay.
And one thing that I haven't been able to figure out is if I add a channel somewhere in the mix there, it throws the index off. And what that does is, say I want to type in, I want to hand key in 170. If I've added a channel in there, then 171 pops up. And then I ultimately end up adding about 20 channels and my index gets way off.
Okay, so let's look at an example like that I think you're talking about, and then just let me know if I miss, okay?
Okay.
So let's say we've got a zone here, our zone 4, and let's add a bunch of channels. Let's add 20, right? We got a bunch of channels in this one zone, okay? But let's say that I want channel 20 to actually be channel 1. So the easiest way to do that, so here's my frequency is 150, and I want this one, channel 20, to be channel 1. The easiest way to do that is to select channel 20 on the index here, right-click it, and you see where it says move entry up? If I click that
Yes.
one time, it'll move 20 up. Or if I select now number 19 and I press and hold the control key and press up, you can see every time I press up, 20 moves to the top, bubbles to the top. Now, some things to avoid is if I select, say, these 5 channels, okay, and I hit -C to delete them, what you're going to see here is that 6 doesn't move up to 1 like you anticipate, right? And if I select 6 and I say move entry up, it won't move up to 5 like you would anticipate it to. So in this case here, now my code plug starts at 6 and not at 20, and I seem to be stuck. So you got to think about, like, when you're deleting channels, that it's not going to fill in the gaps. Now, the easiest way to fill in the gap would be to select 5 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to right click that and hit copy. And then I'm going to select number 6 and I'm going to select paste above. Oh, that didn't do it either, right? So that can get really frustrating, and you have to be extra careful when you're editing the order.
Okay.
So what I recommend doing is, let me just start again. So again, if I have, so Tallahassee's made this big list for you and you don't like the order that it's in, I would avoid deleting things and instead, like, use control, and I can move 20 up. But just as you see me moving 20 here now at the top, I can take number 1 and I can hit control down and I can move it to the bottom. So what I recommend that you do is use that method to reorganize channels the way you want. And then if you have any channels that need to be deleted, squirt them all the way down at the bottom and then delete them off. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, basically our channels start at 10 and end at about 223. So I just need to know how to make the index, and that's a pretty good explanation. I think I can work with that.
And then I think, I haven't done it in a while, but I think if you see me click and drag here where I can select multiples, and then I hit control and up, you see that I move this as a whole group is moving now. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It might be easier if I change the frequencies too. So like these that I've set to 150, I can hit control and you can see where 150 is just moving as a big block. I hope that helps as well.
Yep, I think that's got it. Thank you, sir.
Great question. Anybody else got any more questions? Did I miss anybody? Everybody get a chance to ask any questions? Awesome. Thanks for your time today. And just a reminder, we've got conventional programming this week, and then we've got trunk programming where we'll do a similar class just like this, but we're going to focus on programming trunked concepts into the radio for trunking networks. That's going to be on Tuesday, April 28th. Same bat time, same bat channel. If you don't have an invite, reach out to your dealer or RSM and they will get you one, I promise. And we'll also be doing more training, probably another conventional like this and a few other training lessons. So keep an ear out for that as well. Thanks for everybody's time today. I hope you stay safe. And until next time.
Thanks, Clint. See you guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for your